Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Imagine leading organizations that combine theology, entrepreneurship, and finance. That's exactly what Reverend Dr. Frank Clark Spencer has done throughout his remarkable 30-year career. From taking his real estate company public on the New York Stock Exchange to being named Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Frank has mastered both for-profit and non-for-profit leadership. Now, as the president of the Board of Pensions for Presbyterian Church USA, he oversees $13 billion in assets and provides care for 65,000 beneficiaries. Join us as we explore his unique journey of faith, finance, and leadership. Dr. Frank Spencer, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's wonderful to be here. Looking forward to a conversation.
So, give us a brief background, your unique blend of like theology, finance. How has your experience in both these fields shaped your leadership style and approach to managing organizations?
Well, one thing I tell people is it looks like from the outside that I've jumped around a lot, but that isn't really the case. Throughout my life, there have been pillars that have been important to me, beyond family, of course. The church has always been an important part of my life. Civic engagement has always been an important part of my life. And finance has been the defining element of my career. And through those three pillars, different elements have taken precedence at different times. So I started my career in banking and business school and went into real estate. But at the same time, I was building a portfolio of civic involvement. I was elected an elder at my church, taught Sunday school, taught disadvantaged kids in Charlotte every Wednesday night for 7 years with my wife. And as I began to move through, I began to see different emphasis. So for a while, finance took the front row as I built a real estate company and ultimately took that public on the New York Stock Exchange. But after I retired from that company and that company was sold, I decided that it was time to be more thoughtful about theology, and I went to divinity school. I went to seminary and did a master's of divinity. While I was doing that degree, the church asked me to take this role leading the Board of Pensions. And in many ways, I was bizarrely qualified for this. I had been an expert in the capital markets, in investments, and knew that end of the world. My real estate company had been focused on healthcare, and so I had served the medical industry for 15 consecutive years and really knew the ins and outs of that industry. And finally, being in seminary, I was a few months away from being ordained as a Presbyterian minister. And so this board asked me to come as their president. Those are the three major things we do: pensions, healthcare, and of course, serving the church. So I answered that call 10 years ago, and I've been in this role for the last 10 years.
That's amazing. I grew up in a Catholic family, so always been around theology. Um, and it's you never really heard like finance and God being talked together, even though it's in the Bible that they say like I forget what it is, but the love of money, like everybody says the love of money is evil.
The
But it's
root of all evil.
the root of all evil, but it doesn't necessarily like say that in the Bible. I'm sure you know what exactly it says.
Well, if I were going to give you a broad scriptural interpretation, it would be that greed or self-interest
Hmm.
is really what the original sin is. The sin of pride, of putting self before others, of putting self before God, of putting self before our spiritual lives. It's that human inclination toward greed. But I want to get back for just a moment. You mentioned finance and faith in the same breath, and that's really important to us here. One of the first things I did is I asked our ministers to write a theology of benefits. What does it mean to provide health care and income security and pensions for the people who have answered God's call? And so, what we say around here is that the two sides of the coin are excellence and hospitality. Now, you don't hear that much in the corporate world, but let me explain what I mean. Excellence means we are all called to maximize our gifts and our skills and become experts at what we do. And when we do that, we should have some excess capacity. People who are really excellent at their job don't have to do it every waking hour. They don't even have to do it every day, every minute they're on the job. And so if you have a little extra capacity, that's where we provide hospitality. So, for example, our call center here has no goals on the number of calls per day, no goals on how many minutes someone can be on the phone with someone who needs help. And I remind our people that you may be the only person someone who is elderly talks to that day. And people tend to call us at their most vulnerable times. They've gotten a bad medical diagnosis, or someone has passed away, or they're contemplating retirement. All of these are very emotionally fraught transitions in life. And so we say, stay on the phone as long as you need. And what we say is, if you do your job with excellence and you take time to extend hospitality to everyone you encounter, workers, business partners, and certainly the members who depend on us, that people then experience grace. And that's how they know we're part of the church. But it's not just being nice and kind, it's being excellent at what you do, as well as extending the hospitality to the people who need it.
Yeah, thriving at what you're good at while doing kingdom work at the same time and putting people over profits.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I love that. So, taking a company public is a super major achievement. Can you can you walk us through like the challenges and successes you experienced during this process with your real estate company?
Sure. So the first thing that I would tell anyone who asks is that while the investment bankers pretend they are helping you, you are actually the product they are selling.
Uh-huh.
Because everyone is betting on the come. When you decide to take a company public and the bankers and the attorneys and everybody else signs on, nobody gets paid unless the offering goes and begins trading and the money comes in, because all of those expenses are taken out of the IPO. And so their goal is to get you in front of as many institutional investors as possible. It took our kickoff meeting was February 8th, and it took us until October 27th to go public. In the last 2 weeks, we flew all over the country doing our road show. We did 80 sales presentations in 10 business days, so 8 per day. And you still don't know if you've quote, made the book. That's what you're trying to do. The investment bankers, trading teams are trying to find a price and pre-sales that are enough to, quote, get you at, make the book and get you out. So our little company, big for us, little for them, was priced at $18 to $20 a share. That's what we projected. The book eventually made at $17 a share, and so we started trading on the stock exchange at $17 a share with a $1.45 dividend. And things changed for us overnight. I had bought into the company 9 years earlier, and the company was worth $10 million. My partner and I were the only two owners. And when we went public, this was not our wealth, but the company was valued at $365 million. And at that moment, we were 1/10. We were the smallest healthcare REIT in America that was public, and we were 1/10 the largest competitor. And we grew like crazy, which I can tell you about, but it wasn't fast enough.
So what do you mean by it wasn't fast enough?
So in the first 32 months, we were a public company. We acquired two companies. We grew from a market capitalization of $365 million to just over $1 billion. So in less than 36 months, we had tripled in size. And we had become the largest healthcare design build firm in America. And we were vertically integrated from design all the way through property management. In fact, 48% of the value of every building we did went through our company, not through through subs that a typical contractor would do.
Right.
So we were capturing a huge portion of the value chain. But here was the problem. In the time that we grew from 365 to $1 billion, the largest competitor went from 3 billion to 15 billion. And so now we were 1/15 the size of the largest competitor. And the global financial crisis hit in the fall of 2008. And our stock price started to go down because we were not the biggest. We were not the strongest. I would argue we had the best operating company, but not the best capital structure. And so all of a sudden, you're facing forces and market realities that were never a part of your private business. And those things make it hard to navigate. We came through that crisis. We eventually sold the company, and we were okay. But the being public has its set of challenges that being private never does.
Now, do you say that which one outweighs the other, do you think?
So what I would say is it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are to live a private life and not be answerable to anybody else and have your own business and take out some reasonable amount of money every year, there are advantages to being private. If you want growth, if you want no personal liability, if you want an engine that is both hard to control but incredibly powerful, then there is no substitute for going public in the capital markets. I'll give you one example. The night before we went public, my partner and I had drawn the entirety of our line of credit. So we owed the bank $4 million. And that was $4 million that we couldn't pay back. our company didn't produce enough cash flow to pay back $4 million in 12 months.
Mm.
Um, and so he looked at me and he said, "Are we going to make the book?" And I said, "Well, we're going to make the book or we're not going home." Um, and the next morning, we had just gone public. We had just started trading. I had a line of $100 million of unsecured credit on my signature alone from Bank of America and a consortium of 6 other banks. And
Wow.
so I paid off the $4 million and we never had to raise equity for a deal again. So it's amazingly powerful, but it also subjects you to forces that you may not have anticipated.
Yeah, yeah, wow. That's that's amazing. $100 million line of credit. Boy, what real estate
Unsecured.
unsecured. What you know, any real estate guy would do for that.
Right. Um, and I tell people, um, as CEO, I used to be in the development business, but as soon as we went public, I was in the marketing and capital
Mm,
markets business.
yeah. So you said, you know, everything was great leading up to 2008. You sold the company, but in 2009, you got named Ernest and Young Entrepreneurship of the Year. So how did that come through tuition? And you know, how has that influenced your work today?
Sure. So 2008 was the worst fall in capital markets in most people's memory.
Mhm.
Um, and by 2009, we had to recapitalize the company. And so we issued more stock, we paid down debt, but we were still very much a going concern. And um, that was in May of 2009. By August of 2009, so 1 year later, we had doubled the stock price, and we were very much back in the market. Um, and it was that fall that I was nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year, and won that award for construction and real estate in the Southeast. Um, and that was really in recognition of the fact of what we had built. Um, so we took a $10 million regional company and had taken it public, had grown it to $1 billion market cap, had grown it to the largest healthcare design build firm in America, and had come through the financial crisis and we're now back in stable territory. The company ultimately sold a year and a half later, as I took my 5 year term and took my retirement. But in 2009, when I got the award, we had just come through the financial crisis. We were back on our feet. We had gone national. We had been a Southeast regional company. We now had offices in Dallas, Denver, Seattle, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Columbia, South Carolina, and Charlotte. And so
Wow.
we had projects going in all 48 lower continental states, including California, which was its own set of challenges. But through those offices, had really become a national player on the national stage. And what they recognized was that I didn't found the company, my partner did. But I was able to grow it and scale it and take it public as the CEO.
Yeah, that's awesome. And really awesome that you made it through the financial crisis. A lot of real estate developers did not. Uh, is,
Correct.
is that because you think of the niche that you were in?
Um, that's part of it. Um, we also had the best operating company in the industry. Not one of our buildings failed. Never did our cash flow go down. So despite the challenges on the capital side, debt and equity, and those are real, the operations never wavered. And so our buildings continued to provide cash flow. We did cut our dividend to preserve cash, but we never cut it to zero. So we continued to pay our investors. And we had big players who had missed the IPO, who, when we recapitalized, came back in. For example, Fidelity had wanted 15% of the IPO, but didn't get it because they only offered $16, not $17. When we recapitalized, Fidelity came back in and bought 10% of our company. And they ended up making a lot of money on us because we doubled the stock value in the next 5 months. It was really recognizing that we came through the financial crisis, and we did that by staying focused on operations, even while we were putting out fires on the capital side.
So fast forward to kind of, current, president of the Board of Pensions for Presbyterian Church USA. How do you balance or integrate the spiritual and financial responsibilities of managing 13 billion in assets and serving 65,000 beneficiaries?
I'll give you a two-part answer. We are a global investor. We are diversified. Portfolio theory is important around here. We actually manage our own portfolio. We don't use any consultants. We've got a team here on staff. But we have the great luxury of being funded more than 100%. At our last fiscal year end, our pension fund was funded 150%. And so we are global investors, highly diversified, but also very conservative in the way we approach our investments. We're never going to be a high flyer like some of the endowments, but our downside capture is very low on a relative basis. So that's how we manage the capital side of the business. In terms of people, we are here to serve. So I came out of industry, and I first got here, and I would see someone with a terrible diagnosis, and I would think to myself, oh man, that's going to cost us $1 million. And my attitude has completely shifted. I now see someone with a terrible diagnosis, and I think to myself, I give thanks to God that we have the resources to care for that person. And I've made that complete shift. And so we protect our members with incredible energy. And we know our members. In fact, my staff here likes to joke that I know every Presbyterian minister in the United States, which is not true. But I know an awful lot of them. And when I talk about hospitality and what that means, I answer every hard letter that I get with a hard copy letter. I answer every email I get with my own email. And every one of those letters and every one of those emails has my direct phone number on it. And it's not unusual, and this is where some of the jokes come from, for those ministers just to call me directly because they feel they've got a personal relationship. And I have literally received calls. I get calls weekly from our members, which is fantastic. But I remember many occasions, one in particular, I got a call from a minister who knew me, who was sitting on the side of his wife's hospital bed
Mm.
with a question about what they needed to do next in healthcare. And I didn't have the answer, but I said, if you will give me 15 minutes and a phone number to call you back, we'll call you back. And I ran up to our plant operations team, and they knew exactly what to do. And we called that minister back, and he said, I was so embarrassed to call you. I just didn't know who else to call. I didn't know who else at the board, and I knew you'd help me solve my problems. And so we did. Now, it wasn't me, it was the team.
Mm.
Um, but that's the key to our service here, is the incredible dedication of the team we've got.
Yeah, not that it's in comparison of what you just said, but when answering somebody if they have a question, a lot of people will just try to come up with some wazzy woozy thing. If they don't truly know, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I know what it is." Da 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 da. It's like if I don't know, I'm gonna find the answer for you and get right back to you. And I love that attitude, about going about everything. Now, you did talk about your team, and the pension fund that you run, I'm sure your team's one, amazing, two, very large. So, what traits do you prioritize when building that successful leadership team, in non-for-profit and profit-driven organizations?
Sure. So it is always a combination.
Mm.
If some managers will answer that and say, I hire for attitude. Well, that's great. Well-meaning people are important. So I hire for attitude too, but I also hire for skill.
Mm.
We need experts in what they do. So if I look across our executive leadership and then our vice presidents, we have expertise in every area that we are offering services. So all of our investment team are professionals, and it's actually quite small. There are only 12 of them. Our head of benefits is a true industry expert in healthcare. Um, our marketing team is led by a master's level marketing vice president. Our IT team is actually one of our largest areas. We run on technology here. And we've brought in amazing people with amazing skills. Yes, they need a service attitude, they need a collaborative attitude. But if they're not experts in what they do, they're actually not helping us.
Mm.
And so, in every single area, whether it's education or church relations or plan operations or our call center or IT, we actually have 11 different departments here. And we have experts in their field in every area who are willing to work collaboratively for the benefit of the members. So it's a both and. Um, Experts who aren't a part of the team wear out their welcome, and people who are good team members who don't bring anything to the party, I'm sorry, but we need people with more skill than that. So it doesn't matter whether you're nonprofit or for profit, you've got to get that combination of expertise and attitude that allows you to be successful.
So, you said you have a team in every, aspect that you need for the fund. How do you make decisions about like where to invest in the context of a large fund like the one you oversee? Like, you obviously have your role, the certain team members have their roles, but is there any like collaborative that you come to all together at meetings? What type of investments, et cetera?
Very much so. It's a team effort. So our board of directors has an investment committee, which is made up of a combination of investment professionals, which we value greatly, but also some lay participants, including a couple ministers who are a part of that discussion. The investment committee sets the general parameters of where we want the portfolio. So ranges for fixed income, ranges for US public equities, ranges for international equities, ranges for alternative investments like private equity and real estate, and in our case, also a range for cash. We very much look at liquidity because we're paying monthly benefits to our pensioners. And we now pay out about 35 million a month. And we haven't had net new money since 1988. So it's entirely dependent on how much we earn in the market. Then we have the investment team that's run by a well-seasoned chief investment officer, and he has experts in each of those areas. So in public markets, in fixed income, in private equity, and risk management and operations. And so he is making specific recommendations about the portfolio. And then we have the internal investment committee, which is me as president, our general counsel, our chief financial officer, and our deputy CFO make up that internal investment committee. And so there are 3 levels of work that happen. The board's investment committee sets general parameters. The investment employees and team make specific recommendations, and then the management investment committee either approves or thumbs down on the specific investments that relate to the strategy the investment committee has put together. So there are at least 20 people at any one time who have some influence over how that portfolio is constructed. And because we're conservative, because we have more than 100% funding, we move slowly, and that's by design. You wouldn't see our asset allocation jump dramatically from one month to the next, or even 1 year to the next. So we take a very long-term view of the markets.
Yeah, I've read a lot on like sovereign wealth funds, endowments, pension funds, and like, you guys are like more like the low risk, steady, wins the race.
Absolutely.
But that's amazing. $30 million in benefits a month. I can't wait till I get there. That's amazing. It's always been a lifelong dream to, give the middle class wealth without Wall Street, where, we invest in Main Street, and give people better than average returns without all the wazzy ups and downs and whatnot. And just also making true impact as well, like social impact ROI as well. So $30 million a month, that is, God's work right there in itself.
Well, and that's just the payout. So we try to be very consistent. We don't make increases in pensions based on the annual results. We make increases based on the overall balance sheet. And what that's allowed us to do, if you went back over the last 12 years, you would find some years have been negative in terms of total investment return. But we've given increases for 12 consecutive years, totaling 46.6% increase in benefits. And 2 important things about that. Our increases are permanent, so we never go backwards. And our increases don't just go to pensioners, they go to all active members who are accruing pensions as well. Because one of the things the church says is we want generational equity. So we don't benefit one class over another. So you may only be 45 years old and you're accruing your pension. You're going to get the same benefit increase the pensioners do. And we've been able to do that increase for the last 12 years in a row because our conservative assumptions allow us to do consistent increases. And I'll just say that is highly unusual in U.S. pensions.
Without a doubt, and not to go backwards either. Oh,
We say whenever we do an increase, it's a permanent increase in benefits.
keeping that promise of the Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned that you're working on a book as well that's going to be published within the year next year. Secrets of Success: How to Build a Successful Career and a Happy Life. Can you talk about that and give the listeners what's that about? What inspired you to write that book?
Well, a lot of people inspired me to write the book. I've been telling stories about my 40 years in business and church and life. And I've had people say, you ought to write those stories down. But really, let me talk about the principles behind the stories. Um, there are two principles that I want to highlight. One is everyone's life needs to be integrated. We need to think about, for me, there have been four pillars: church, civic, finance, and family. And those four pillars have always been present in my life. And I've tried not to sacrifice one for the other, but to integrate them into a single whole. And I think that's really the key to happiness in life. I've loved not every moment of my career, but I've loved every chapter of my career. Certainly, we all have hard moments, but I've loved everything I've done. But I've never sacrificed participating in church or participating in civic events or serving on the boards of universities or the real estate program at a particular university. And I've not sacrificed my family either. We've traveled as a family. Both of our kids were high-level athletes. Melanie and I hardly ever missed a swim meet or a basketball game because I controlled my schedule and integrated all of those things into one coherent life. The other thing that I would emphasize that's in the book and discussed at length is that I think there are three primary characteristics that lead to both success and happiness. And those are commitment to both whatever you're doing and whoever you're doing it with. In my case, that's my wife, Melanie. But also my career and the goals, and to being excellent at whatever I've done. The second thing is you have to be compassionate. You have to be compassionate. You have to care about the other people, not just the people you serve, but everybody you come into contact with. I've always preached to my staff, every person, our suppliers, our business partners, they need to be better off because they did business with us, not worse off. The idea of a zero-sum game in life is a loser's bet because you lose credibility with your constituents and your community. And the third thing is curiosity. You've got to be curious both about other people. If it's your spouse is going to change over the decades. What are their real needs? But it's also about lifelong learning and getting better at what you do. And so this idea of commitment, of curiosity, and compassion, those three traits are what will actually end up helping you build the life that you've always wanted and be successful in ways that you couldn't imagine.
I love every bit of that. I live my life by like five pillars of wealth because people always think like wealth is just financial and it's many other things. You have health, you have financial wealth, you have relationships, you have contribution, and then you have spirituality. Spirituality, if you're religious or just mindful, relationships like love, friends, family, and just keeping all those buckets full because like you said, um, there's many aspects to life about other than just, money or business, but then having them all integrated together. So you live a full life.
And what I have found is that when those things are integrated, the individual components tend to take care of themselves.
Hmm.
Um, in sales, people want to buy from people they like. It's not tricking people to buy stuff they don't need. It's solving real problems. It's working on real aspects. It's giving people jobs that allow them to care for their families. That's how you build loyalty, not um, not through bonuses or other means of manipulating people. You can do that in the short run, but you'll find that over a career that doesn't work. And so I think um, success in business has to be complemented and integrated with success in individual relationships as well.
No, I couldn't agree more. My partner Liana, pretty much my wife, we've been together 10 years. Um, is the backbone of my success. Well, our success, not our success.
Right.
Without her, without a strong woman behind me, and she runs part of the organization, I run the other. And then we integrated sometimes if, I'm only feeling like a 20% today, she picks up the other 80 or vice versa. If she's only got 20% today, I pick up 180 today. But yeah, that relationship has been such a, pillar in our company and so many people was like always like, oh, we envy you because you get to work with your significant other or whatever you build, build a dream life with your significant other. How did you do that? And it's like, maybe I just got lucky, or maybe we just heard each other out and valued our traits, our opinions, and we worked as a team and not, keeping score.
So I would say it's intentional. Um, it's about commitment. Um, and Melanie and I have created space for each other in different chapters of our lives. Both of us are second career doctorate graduates. So she was a um, senior vice president in marketing for Bank of America and went back and did a PhD in bioinformatics. And I was a CEO on the New York Stock Exchange, went to seminary and did a doctorate in ministry. So um, it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to pursue. And Melanie couldn't have done hers if I had not created the space.
Hmm.
And I could not have done my seminary work if Melanie had not created the space for me. And so together, we've achieved things we never would have attempted on our own. And
Yeah,
that's probably a good place for us to wrap up.
absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
certainly enjoyed talking with you, Jake.
Time flies when we're having fun, Dr. Frank. So, for listeners that want to learn more, about your ministry, just more about what you have going on, your book that's eventually going to come out, what's the best place for them to go to?
They can go to my personal website, www.fspencer.com. You can also hear sermons there if that's what you're into. Or if you want to learn about the Board of Pensions, it's www.pensions.org.
Awesome, Dr. Frank Spencer. It was a pleasure having you on Philly Fortune Talks today.
All right. Great to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.